Hey HCDA, and welcome back to my Satisfactory 1.0 Masterclass. In each episode I'll give you one specific goal to work towards that you should ideally be able to complete in 1 or 2 sessions. And today's goal is going to be extremely simple. We're going to be 100%ing the game. After the last episode we already have the first 2 items that we need to complete phase 5 in production, so let's go on and get the next one. And the next one is quantum encoding. That will give you access to a whole bunch of new items to produce, including one of the items that we need to complete phase 5. Once you have that, I actually also recommend that you pick up the peak efficiency technology that allows you to make Mark 6 belts. For the belt technology you're going to need a whole lot of plates, and I recommend just setting up a storage unit to siphon those off from one of your earlier facilities. 10,000 sounds like a lot, it is a lot, but it will take care of itself if you just leave the storage unit alone for a little while. Before you do anything else, if you haven't already slooped your nuclear pasta production, this might be the moment where you want to do so, because again, remember, you need 1,000 of those in order to complete phase 5, but we're also going to need the nuclear pasta to make some of the other items, so there's no downside of having plenty of that pasta to go around. At this stage of the game, you have a choice. You can either work hard, or you can work smart. And by working hard, I mean building a completely new factory to make the 2 items that we still need to produce. By working smart, I mean actually leveraging the infrastructure that we already have. For example, we're going to need about 100 reanimated SAM per minute, and I could get that from a different SAM node somewhere far away, or I could just pick the ones really close to my actual main base that I already tapped into, I think, a dozen episodes by now, and completely restyle this. Which only takes a Mark III miner, a single constructor completely overclocked and slooped, just because we need a little bit more than this can actually produce, and we need a drone to carry all of this off. In order to make sure that that drone actually has fuel, we can make use of the already existing fuel setup that we have over here for our drones that were exporting the time crystals. So this is just saving ourselves a little bit of time by making use of what we already had. Speaking of which, we already had a particle accelerator making diamonds, but now I want 2 of them, and I want them both overclocked to 200%. Now this is going to require 1200 coal per minute, which happens to be exactly the same as a Mark III miner on a pure node can produce when you completely overclock it. As you can see, you are going to need the Mark 6 belt, the new one that we just unlocked, in order to actually completely get all the items to the particle accelerator, because, well, 1200 items per minute is quite a lot. We also happen to have 3 coal nodes over here, so you can see 1, 2, and 3, and the third one is split off in 3 belts because that is feeding into our very early steel factory. Now we're producing the additional diamonds as well as the reanimated SAM. We're going to be importing that into our main base and basically expanding the little airfield that we have going over here. Next up is expanding the side platform that I started last time where we're making the biochemical sculptors. However, this time around we are going to be adding some new buildings to that. Specifically, we're going to add 2 converters, just normal speed, that are going to be using the reanimated SAM that we're now bringing in, and they are going to be producing dark matter residue. Then we're going to be adding in yet another converter, and this one is going to be producing excited photonic matter. This is actually completely free to produce, you don't need any inputs, so that's a nice change of pace. We're also going to need slightly more FICSIT trigons than we're currently producing, and, well, I could go and upgrade all the production that we already have for that, or I could just throw in a summer sloop in one of the constructors. If you put a summer sloop into anything, you typically want to make sure this is producing at maximum rate, so make sure you do that, and that should mean we have plenty of these trigons to go around. Similarly, we are going to be slooping the supercomputer production that we already had in the main facility, just doubling the production that's going to come out, and again, just make sure you overclock it because you might as well. Next up on the list is a beautiful building we call the quantum encoder, and that is going to be producing some neural quantum processors for us. Now this is where the slooped supercomputers and trigons go in. If you don't have enough summer sloops to actually put those into those production buildings just yet, don't worry about it, you can always just add them in later. Just make sure you get this going, even if it's not working at 100% efficiency, that's not a problem. As a note of that, you actually only need this to work at 50% anyway, so make sure you underclock it. And we're also going to be bringing in those time crystals that we made in the previous episode. We are already just a handful of buildings away from completing phase 5, and in order to do that, we're going to need some more of these particle accelerators. Specifically, we need 2 of them, overclocked to 100% in order to take those diamonds and the dark matter residue and turn them into dark matter crystals. Now, you're going to need to feed the dark matter residue from the 2 converters that we made, but you also need to take into account that the neural quantum processor is going to be producing some dark matter residue as well. So make sure that all goes into the same pipeline, and if this ever backs up, just start overclocking the particle accelerators a little bit more, because you want to make sure that you are consuming enough dark matter residue so that your other buildings are not backing up. For the next item on the list, we're once again going to be turning to our main facility and slooping one of the production facilities that we already built before. In this case, we're going to be making sure that we get some more crystal oscillators going, because we need about 3.5 of those per minute in addition to what we were already producing before. That then allows us to set up yet another one of these quantum encoders, and this one is going to be producing the super precision oscillators. Very expensive words at this point. Those are going to be taking in the dark matter crystal that we're now producing, the additional crystal oscillators. You're also going to be able to feed the tiny little bit of additional alkylate aluminum sheets that we're producing all the way back in our original aluminum facility. I have not built any more of those anywhere along the way. And we're also bringing in some more of that excited photonic matter that we're now producing. You only need this to work at 70% speed, but you might as well put it to 100 if you want, because you are going to need plenty of those to go around, and that will actually speed up some of the additional production later on. And then, just because we like quantum encoders so much, we're going to be building a third one of those, and this one is going to be producing the actual AI expansion server, which is one of the last items we need in order to complete phase 5. That's going to take in the magnetic field generators, one of the other phase 4 items that we were producing already, that you probably by now have a whole stockpile of. And it's going to take in the neural quantum processors and super precision oscillators that we were producing in the buildings next door. Which means that with this tiny little facility over here, and by leveraging everything else that we were already producing, we're now producing 3 of the 4 items we need to complete phase 5. We actually already have pretty much everything we need to make the last item, but there's one exception, and that is the concrete. Now, if you took my recommendation, I don't know, about 10 episodes ago probably, where I recommended that you set up a specific facility just to get some more concrete in for building purposes, then you can leverage that facility as well to make sure you have that 100 concrete per minute that we need in order to make the last item. Just add in some drone ports, one to get in some fuel and then the other to actually export the concrete, and you're good to go. Strangely enough, we actually also need some iron plates along with the concrete. Yes, some very basic materials, and you could build a new facility for that, or you could just use the facility that we've literally had from the beginning. This is the very first starting base that we built. It's producing quite a bit of iron plates, so we can just make sure we add in the Mark III miners, upgrade the belts, and then just have these things overclocked a little bit to produce an additional 50 iron plates per minute. Now, of course, you could run a belt to the main facility in order to get those materials there, but I'm lazy, so I just add in a couple of drone facilities in order to once again export this to wherever I need it to go. We're now actually only 2 manufacturers away from completing the game, and in order to make those manufacturers actually produce what we need, we're going to need to unlock spatial energy regulation. That's going to take you some of those oscillators that we're now producing, along with some other materials that you should probably have plenty of now. Go and unlock that, and then we're going to go back to our main base. Just to keep the main base a little bit symmetric, I figured why not just set up those manufacturers on the other side of the space elevator, along with 2 of these drone structures, one of them to bring in the concrete and one of them to bring in the plates. Now, then the first manufacturer is going to be producing the singularity cells. It's going to need nuclear pasta, dark matter crystal, both of which we are currently already producing, the plates and the concrete. And those singularity cells are going to go into the other manufacturer that is then going to be producing the ballistic warp drive. We're going to need to bring in the thermal propulsion rockets from phase 4 as well, along with some of the oscillators that we're producing. So these are actually going to go into 2 of the production buildings that we made in this episode. And then the remaining dark matter crystals are once again going to go into this building, and we're going to be producing a nice amount of ballistic warp drives. Once you've hooked all of that up and the manufacturers are hooked up to the power as well, then effectively you've kind of completed the game. As you can see, I have now all 4 items in production to complete phase 5. However, if you want to spend that time not just waiting around and getting dinner or something, I would recommend that you do a couple of other things to actually get the remaining achievements to complete the game in its entirety. Now, achievements might not be your thing, so if you're just worried about completing phase 5, then, well, like I said, you're pretty much done. But if you are interested in achievements, then I would highly recommend that you sloop the end game products, the 4 things that we're producing for phase 5, so that you get as many of these out of the production as you can. Why? Because we're going to need a whole lot of tickets to actually get the last few achievements. In order to get those tickets at this point, there's pretty much no reason any longer to stock anything up, because we're not going to be building anything, well, unless you want to. So just grab all the stuff that you have in storage and just set up a storage container somewhere, dump it in, and make sure it's hooked up to a sink so you can get all those juicy coupons going. What I really like about Satisfactory's achievements is that you'll actually get most of them by just playing the game. However, there's a couple of them that might not be as obvious, so I'm gonna walk you through the ones that you're probably missing at this point. First of all, you're going to need to reach the highest peak in the game, which happens to be this one or right here in the rocky desert. All you need to do is make your way to that cliff and stand on top of that, but once you are actually on that cliff, what you want to do is start building a ladder all the way up into the sky, because there's another achievement that triggers when you actually reach the top of the buildable space. If you're wondering how high you're going to need to go up in order to actually reach that, the answer is, well, very, very high, as you can see. You will know once you've gone far enough when you actually start actively taking damage. As you can see right now, if I go down slightly, I stop taking damage. Basically, the trigger for the achievement is the same as the trigger for that damage to start occurring. While you're waiting for the last items to be produced, as well as the tickets that you need for one of the other achievements, you might as well just go around and collect some of the items like Mercer Spheres, Summer Sloops, and Hard Arrives, because there's achievements for those as well. While you're exploring, you'll probably get across some of these lizard doggos. If you haven't tamed one yet, well, there's an achievement for that as well. Just make sure you crouch down not to scare them off. Put some of these pillberries on the ground. They will run over to that, start eating that. You might need to move back a little bit in order for them to be doing that. Once they start eating it, you can just pet them and they will be permanently tamed. In order to open some of the drop pods, you actually need quite a bit of power, which can be annoying once you're on the other side of the island and you're nowhere near your actual factory. In order to make that super easy, I would recommend you bring 10 Summer Sloops with you. You're going to be collecting them anyway, and build yourself an alien power augmenter to make that super trivial and easy to do. One of the least obvious achievements that you need to get involves the manta rays that you see flying around, specifically in the grassy fields as well as in some of the other zones. Now, if you want to get close to one of these, it can be a little bit annoying because they have a fixed flying pattern, but it might be not obvious where that is going to take them. But there's one of the positions in the grassy fields that is basically underneath this giant arc that they're going to be passing right underneath. Build yourself a little ramp or a ladder or both, and it should be fairly easy for you to get on top of one of those manta rays. Once you're on top of one of these, not only do you get to experience the awesomeness of flight on one of these creatures, you actually also can pet them, getting you another achievement. Another kind of strange achievement that you need to get is getting hit by a car. So if you haven't used any vehicles yet, just set one of them up, have them drive around in a circle or whatever, and then just stand in front of their path and they will knock you over. There's also an achievement for completing the entire technology tree in the MAM. Now, what I would recommend is that you try to get as far as you can based on your current production. And then you're going to run into some items that you are probably not producing or that you might need to go out and get. Well, if you need to go out and get them, that's just fine. However, if there's items that you're not really producing and that you don't have any interest in producing, let's say, for example, the packaged rocket fuel that you need in order to unlock ionized fuel, then you can just go to the awesome shop and buy that stuff. However, if you're going to be buying stuff from the shop, I would recommend that you save the game, complete the technology tree, so the entire technology tree, and then reload the game to the point before you spend those tickets, because it's kind of a shame to start spending tickets at this point where you're going to need 1,000 of them to complete one of the other achievements. On top of that, there is one particular thing that you need uranium cells for. So the nuclear deterrent development technology requires you to have uranium cells, which you can't actually buy from the Awesome Shop. So we're going to need to produce those. I would not recommend actually automating the uranium cells unless you want to also set up some uranium power. If you do, that's fine, it's part of that process. If you just want to keep it simple, there's a uranium node here on top of that high cliff that we just visited. And there's some sulfur down here near the water that we're going to need in order to make them like the easy way. Set up a refinery near the water in order to take the sulfur node that's there and the water in order to make some sulfuric acid. Then just put down a blender next to that, get the sulfuric acid in there and just add manually some uranium and concrete into that. And you will start making the encased uranium cells already. At this point, you're probably going to be left with one hidden achievement, and that actually requires you to do something silly in order to unlock kind of an Easter egg. What you need to do is you need to sink a coupon. So rather than getting the coupons out of the sink, you're actually going to throw one in there, which is kind of wasteful, so make sure you save before that. However, once you do that, you're going to unlock the cyber wagon in the shop, and that allows you to build, well, kind of like a Tesla. This cyber wagon with its square wheels is not particularly useful, so I wouldn't recommend normally spending your tickets on this, but once you drive it around, you will actually get yourself an achievement. At this point, all there should be left is either complete phase 5 or get yourself a golden nut. And in order to get that, you're going to need 1,000 tickets in order to buy it in the Awesome Shop, which is honestly quite a lot. If you want to speed up the process a little bit, make sure you kill everything that you see inside and transform those remains into alien protein using a sloop to double the production. And then of course make some alien DNA capsules out of that, once again slooping that in order to get yourself plenty of tickets, because these are actually pretty cheap to get. It will increase, so at some point you actually need to kill quite a few creatures in order to get yourself another coupon, but it adds up if you compare it to the actual value of the coupons that you get the normal way. Keep slooping all the end products for phase 5, because the ballistic warp drive in particular is going to be worth way more points than anything else, but on top of that all the other things that go into this, like singularity cells and thermal propulsion rockets, etc., are going to be worth a lot of items as well. So what you can also do is just grab those out of here if you are producing more of them than you need, or sloop them if you are not already doing that. Grab nuclear pasta, things like that as well. And then just throw them once again into the sink in order to get more points. And once you finally get your golden statue, that should be the most difficult achievement of all of them to get, then all you need to do is go to your space elevator and send off the last phase for assembly. Now, don't close the game right away after that, stick close to the elevator, because there's actually a couple of other things that happen after that. You can do some stuff in the elevator. I'm not going to show that to you, I don't want to spoil it, because it's, well, kind of satisfying to see the accomplishments of your work by yourself, but just make sure that you don't log out before you actually do that. It's not super special, it doesn't take a long time, but it is quite fun and entertaining to kind of close out the story. And if you've done all of that, then probably this masterclass was useful, because you joined the few percent of people that actually completely finished the game, which was the point of this masterclass. But you also joined the even smaller group of people that actually completed every single achievement in the game. So, if you're still here, you are awesome. I hope you found this masterclass useful, and I do hope to catch you in the next one, where we're going to be playing one of my favorite factory games of all time.